is, why is this Passover, why is this Pesach different from all other years? Everybody is dealing with what, we all know what we're dealing with. It's a challenging time. It's a stressful time. It's a sorrowful time. It's a hopeful time. And as we learned last week with Charlie Harari, we want to be great during this time, but we want to understand some of the messages behind Passover. What are we supposed to do differently this year to raise ourselves up? It's a scary time, and it's hard to be spiritual when you're knee deep in kids and trying to keep the house for Passover with everybody messing up and trying to get everything ready with all the kids home and everything like that. So it's a challenging time in many, many ways. People are dealing with health issues. People are dealing with people that, you know, their neighbors are in ICUs. It's a scary, scary time. We wanted to give some inspiration and some chizuk, some strength to everybody. And we are very, very fortunate and lucky at this point in time to have the wonderful, a very, very choshev guest, Rabbi Pasyach Krohn. Welcome, Rabbi.
Thank you very, very much. It is such a great honor to be on this ladies' talk show. Leah Richheimer and I know each other for a couple of years already, and she is one of the most exciting, enthusiastic people that exists in our nation. And everything she does is so upbeat and so wonderful. Now, as you mentioned, of course, the question that we ask at the seder is perhaps asked this year more than anything else. Why is this night different than any night of the whole year? And now we ask, why is this Yom Tov different than any Yom Tov that we've had since the beginning of time, since perhaps even the time when we left Mitzrayim? And suddenly, I think that all of a sudden we have a totally different perspective of what the holiday is all about. You know, I wrote this Haggadah, which we are going to talk about, and it's called At the Maggid Seder.
Hold it up a little bit higher so everybody can see.
Higher.
It's so great. I'm waiting for mine in the mail, Rabbi. I can't wait. I can't wait to get it.
Who's sending it to you?
Art Scroll.
Okay, great. Okay, fine. Now, what happens is, when they asked me to write this Haggadah, I thought about, why would this Haggadah be different than any other Haggadahs? All of you in the audience know there are thousands of Haggadahs that have been printed over the years. And it occurred to me that perhaps my forte has become over the years the story. And the story is so important because everybody loves a story. An adult loves a story, a child loves a story. And if you're telling a story just for the sake of the story, that's no value. But when you're telling a story that teaches a lesson, that's different. And as a matter of fact, that's what I talk about in the introduction to this Haggadah. I tell a story about stories. And I'll tell you something very interesting. The Talmud tells us in Masechta Sotah that there was Rabbi Avuhu and Rabbi Chisda, and that they were traveling in a town. And one of them gave a lecture on halacha. Not too many people attended it. And the other one gave a lecture on stories, the stories in the Gemara and the significance. And everybody came to those. Now, the gentleman who was giving the halacha lecture, he felt bad because not too many people were at his lecture. So the other rabbi said to him, you know, yours is really more important, except that it's much more sophisticated and difficult to understand. That's why they came to me. They loved the story. But then the commentary is right. He only said that to make him feel good. But really, if you want to know who Hashem is, you got to know the stories. And it's only through the stories of the Torah, the stories in the Gemara, and the stories in the Haggadah that we get to see what Judaism is all about. And so as we have been going through this terrible turmoil the last couple of weeks, I was thinking, what story has ever happened before in the history of the world that we could learn something from it? Because there's got to be a story. There's got to be a lesson. And the more I thought about it, I thought about the beginning of creation. All of you remember that God created the world, but after 10 generations, he said, we got to start all over again. Something's wrong here. And that's why he made the flood in the time, the Mabul in the time of Noah. And that was a new beginning. God said, look, 10 generations, but that's not what I meant. I meant there should be a higher level of caring, not that people are stealing from each other and people are nasty to each other. That's not what life is all about. We got to start all over again. And to me, it seems as if Hashem said to the entire world, Chevra, we got to start all over again. We need a new perspective. You know, we've been traveling all these years and we've been doing lots of stuff, but to a great degree, a lot of our lives and so much that we do is not on the level that I wanted when I created this world. So let's rethink. Let's stop for a moment. So on one hand, we're all united all over the world because we're all in this together. But on the other hand, we're all separate. We're quarantined. We're in our own homes. We have time to think, and we have time to reflect in a way that maybe 3 months ago, who would have the time? We're all so busy. Now we're not thinking about the trips we're going to take on the holiday, and we're not thinking about the clothes we're going to wear at the seder. We're not thinking about all the fancy dishes. We're thinking about the connection to Hashem. What does Hashem want? So I'll tell you something amazing. You know, there's a very interesting Gemara that tells us that Moshe and Noah were totally different. Noah was Ish Tzaddik. When the Torah introduces us to Noah, it tells us he was a tzaddik. But then what happened after the Mabul? Imagine you are in a teva, and that's how I look at all of us. We are in our own teva. Do you ever think about it that way? We're isolated, right? Everybody's in their own ark. And imagine being cooped up in the ark, and it's raining, and it's pouring, and you think you're never going to get out of here, right? And what would be our attitude when we got out? We would jump, and we would sing, and we would dance, and we would be so happy. And you know what the Talmud tells us? And that's what the Pasuk says. Noah planted a vineyard, and he got drunk. Now, that's one way of reacting when you're cooped up in a teva. That's one way when you just can't wait to get out of there, and you kind of lose yourself. But so Noah was Ish Tzaddik in the beginning of life. But at the end of life, when he had the opportunity to continue being on that high level, he failed. But look at Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, how did he become the leader? You know how he became the leader? The Torah tells us something fascinating. And listen to this. The Torah tells us the story, we all know it, that Moshe Rabbeinu saw a burning bush. He saw a fire on a tree, but it wasn't getting consumed. And the Pasuk says, Vayar Hashem. Hashem saw Kisor Lirois, that he turned to look. So the Medrash asks a question, everybody would turn to look. If you're in LA or you're in Chicago, you're in New York, and you see an ambulance, you see a Hatzalah ambulance, everybody turns to look. Why does the Torah tell us, Vayar Hashem, that he turned, that Hashem saw Kisor Lirois, that he turned to look? And the Medrash tells us, no. This was a reflection of Moshe's personality. Moshe Rabbeinu turned to look at the problems of his brothers and sisters. He cared. And when he turned to look, and he became that person of Sor Lirois, turning to look, God said, you're the man. That's when Hashem spoke to him and made him the leader. And that's how we now are going to become great. Every single man, woman, and child watching this presentation must know that we have a potential for greatness, because we who are in our teva, it's only a matter of time till we get out. Hopefully just a couple days, maybe a week or two, but we're going to be out. But God's going to be watching. Are you going to become like Noach? You're going to become drunk and wild and just so happy? What, you can be happy. Or are you going to become that person like Moshe Rabbeinu that is sore lirois, to turn and see the problems of others? Now, I'm going to tell you something now that you're going to be amazed. Do you know the name of the holiday is Pesach, right? We all know that. That's my name. Now, people ask me, was I born on Pesach? Probably not. Probably not. I know I wasn't. I was born on Tu B'Shvat. But maybe my grandfather or my great-grandfather, who, somewhere back there, they were named on Pesach, and they got the name. And the question is, what does Pesach mean? So most people think it means to pass over, that God passed over the doorpost and the mashkoif and the place where the blood was spilled. But that's not what Rashi says. You will be amazed at what the word Pesach means. Rashi says it means v'chamal, God had mercy. God had mercy on the Jewish people. That's what the holiday of Pesach is, having mercy. And that's what the Targum says, ve'echus. God had compassion on the Jewish people. And the Medrash says God had compassion on the Jewish people. It was Pesach for the Jewish people, but it wasn't Pesach for the Egyptians. They were horrendous, terrible, terrible people, as you will learn in the Haggadah, when you will see all the various plagues. Why did they deserve those plagues? And I have a whole thing called Perspectives on Plagues, and you will see the viciousness and the nastiness of how the Egyptians treated the Jews. There was no mercy to be had on these nasty people. And that's why they had blood and animals and pestilence and darkness, all these terrible things. But what about us? You know what we have to do? We have to begin caring. I think before you go to sleep tonight, you got to go out and make a call, make a connection, email, a text, WhatsApp, whatever you do. There are a lot of people that are lonely out there. And that's what the holiday of Pesach is all about. The holiday is caring, ve'echos, ve'achmoil, to have rachmanis. And when you have rachmanis, then you become the leader. That's what leadership is all about. And Rabbi Chatzkel Levenstein writes that God chose Moshe Rabbeinu not because he was the smartest, not because he was the wisest, because he cared. And I want to tell you something. I'm going to cry when I tell you this, but I can't tell you. I am a male, and I always tell people, your name defines you. That's why it's so important to give a name of a tzaddik or a tzaddikis. We don't give our children the name Esav or Korach, right? We only name after tzaddikim. And whatever your name is, that is the definition of your life. So here, my name is Pesach, which means compassion. And you know what my middle name is? Most of you don't know, but it's Yosef, which means a lot. And my name then means Pesach Yosef, to have a lot of compassion, to care. And that's what I pride myself in my life. I believe I care. That lady who just said a few moments ago that she gets my blessing, sister to sister. You know what that is? Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. Every Friday from where I'm sitting right here, I give a blessing to over 750 families, single moms with their children, because I care. I feel the pain of other people. And that's what all of us have to learn this Yom Tov. And when you become that caring person, then God says, you are my people. That's what Avraham Avinu was all about. Avraham Avinu was the person of chesed. And so I want to tell you a great story that happened at a seder that I write about here in this Haggadah at the Maggid Seder. Now, the word Maggid, of course, means a storyteller. Now, I must tell you openly that in the beginning, when people used to call me the Maggid, it was kind of embarrassing because I'm not the Maggid. The real Maggid was the Maggid of Yerushalayim, Rabbi Schwadron. And I got to know him many, many years ago. Well, I had met him in Israel, and then he came to America, and he stayed in my parents' home, which is just a couple blocks away from here. And he was the Maggid. I remember as a teenager, I used to run after him and just listen to his stories. That's why the seder, the longest part of the seder, is called Maggid, because it's stories, and that's what the whole Haggadah is all about. And it's from the stories that you learn a great lesson. So I'm going to tell you a story that happened with me and the Maggid. Now, my father, Olav Shalom, loved him. He loved Rabbi Schwadron. And the first time you can read about it in the book called The Maggid Speaks, when he came to America the first time, my father, my grandfather, my two brothers, and myself, we all went to the airport to greet a man that nobody knew except me. I mean, I didn't know him well, but I certainly had seen him in Israel. And my father invited him into the home, and he stayed with us for 6 months, if you can believe it.
Wow.
And he became like my grandfather. You know, unfortunately, my father had passed away a while afterwards. And Rabbi Schwadron, the Maggid of Jerusalem, he came from Israel. He came to my wedding in Denver, Colorado. That's how close we were. So I want to tell you a story that happened a couple years after my father passed away, and Rabbi Schwadron came to be at our seder. So I was sitting at the head of the seder together with Rabbi Schwadron, and my mother was there with children and grandchildren. And it happened to be that year that the first seder was Saturday night. Now, when it's Saturday night, the seder always starts very late, because after all, you can't prepare the moror and the charoises and the lettuce, everything on Shabbos. You got to wait till after Shabbos. So, of course, the seder started late. Now, most of you know that we in America or in Gullus, whether Canada, England, wherever, we have 2 sedarim, but Israelis have only 1 seder. So even when they come to America, they have only 1 seder. So that night, even though we started late, that was going to be the only seder for Rabbi Schwadron. Now we're sitting at the table, and many of you know that there are many, many laws that one does throughout the seder. The breaking of the matzah, and the eating of the moror, and the 4 cups of wine, and that delicious sandwich, you know, with the harisis and the moror, you know, and it gets all over your kittel. It's just unbelievable. And your tablecloth, right? Now, many, many people are very careful to eat the Afikoman, which is that piece of matzah that we put away at the beginning of the seder, to eat it before chatzos, to eat it before halachic midnight. Doesn't mean 12 o'clock, but whenever midnight is. So let's say that night, midnight was going to be about 12:30. But because we started the seder late, you know, I took a look at my watch, and I was thinking, oh my, you know, we're not going to make it on time. Now, I knew Rabbi Schwadron once told me that ever since he was a child, he never, ever missed eating the Afikoman before chatzos. I take a look at my clock, and I see all the kids are singing, and, you know, all the kids have so much that they've learned in schools about all the halachas and all the frogs, the dancing, and the animals flying, and all these things. And everybody wants to say their divrei Torah. And I'm trying to rush people. I'm trying to rush my mother and rush my nephews and nieces. Now, of course, I was speaking in English, but Rabbi Schwadron got the gist of what I was doing, and he pokes me in my side. I said, is everything okay? He says, Eil zachnit. Eil zachnit means don't rush. I said, Rabbi Schwadron, look at the clock. He didn't let me finish the sentence. He said, Eil zachnit. Don't rush. Okay. So all the kids are singing, and it's getting late. And finally, we finish with the matzah, we finish with the moror, we finish with the sandwich, and we come to the meal. Well, all of you women who have been cooking, and all the years, you know how much you cook. I mean, it's one of the most glorious meals of the year, right? Seder night. So, of course, my mother and my sisters, they had a big meal to prepare and to put on a table. And now I wouldn't dare say anything, but I motioned with my right hand, like, Ma, we got to rush. Boom. I get another poke in my ribs. I look at Rabbi Schwadron and he says, Ich hatte gesagt, I told you, don't rush. Okay, that's it. No matter what. Sure enough, the seder went slowly. We ate everything. And by the time we ate the Afikoman, it was well after Chatzos. And I felt terrible because I knew that he had told me that he had never, ever done that before to violate that law. Now, many of you may not realize, but I made it a very strong point. And this I'm going to include many, many wonderful things. And one of them is Shir HaShirim. Now, I don't know if you've ever read Shir HaShirim, but they say it's not the right way to express it, but Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, is actually a love song between Hashem and the Jewish people. And that's why you cannot read literally the words of Shir HaShirim, because it's an allegory to the love that Hashem, who is the Chassan, feels towards us, the Kala. And that's why many people read it after the Seder, because at the Seder, which has been like the wedding of the Jewish people together with Hashem, as we go towards Har Sinai, of course, so we read the Shir HaShirim. I always read it after the Seder, as did Rav Shalom. So that night, was sitting alone. Everybody went upstairs already. And I turned to Rav Shalom. I said, Rav Shalom, I feel so bad. He says, what do you feel bad about? I said, Rebbe, you once told me that you never missed the Afikoman before Chatzos. And now, because of my family, you missed it. And he said to me words, if I live to be 160, I will never forget. He said, why don't you understand? I said, why don't I understand what? He said, where are your priorities? I said, what do you mean, Rebbe? He said, what does your mother live for? Your mother is a widow. She waits all year that the children and grandchildren should come at the Seder. And she wants to hear their songs. She wants to hear their Divrei Torah. Do you know what it says in the Torah? You're not allowed to pain a widow. Eating the Afikoman before Chatzos is only rabbinical order. Doesn't say that in the Torah that you have to eat the Afikoman before Chatzos. So you're going to make me rush to Seder, eat the Afikoman before Chatzos, which is rabbinic, and violate something of the Torah, which is hurting a widow? Where are your priorities? Wow. That's when I realized.
Rabbi, this is fantastic. We have a lot of questions coming in for you.
Okay.
This is unbelievable. Really.
But I got to tell you another story, but okay. You tell me when I can tell you that other story.
Okay, good. Go mute. Hold on one second.
Okay, let's listen to some questions and then I'll tell you another fabulous story.
Okay, fine. Okay, what's the question, Siri?
Okay, so the question is, we totally understand the part about Hashem wanting families to be inside, like in the Teva.
Right.
But what about not being together with families? Like everyone is so separated.
Fine, got it. Okay, great. That's great. Turn on mute because it's echoing all over the. So the question is that we're all in the Teva, and which is wonderful, but we're all separated from family, and that's very hard. The other question that came in was a question about Rabbi had said what we're meant is to care and be Paysach, caring about other people. What are we meant to do in terms of, that's after. Now you're saying to call people. So just a little bit more on what we're meant to do.
I'll give you clarity.
Okay, fine.
In other words, like this. There are some people that are going to be able to be with some family members. There are many couples that are going to be able to be together. They would never have done this before just to be themselves for Yom Tov, but they have this opportunity now to prepare to be able to elevate themselves and read now certain Haggadahs and be able to discuss with themselves the significance of the Hisha Amda, the significance of Avodah Mayinu, the significance of Manishtana. Many times we rely on the kids to tell us all these things. But now that the husbands and wives will be sitting, maybe now's the time to go on TorahAnytime.com and listen to these great speeches, and to go on, read some of the Haggadahs, and maybe make some notes and keep some notes at the table to be able to discuss it, because there's no rush. Nobody's rushing any place. And it's true, it might be a little bit sad, especially for those who might have to be alone. But just remember, a Jew is not alone. Hashem is with you. And listen to this, think about this. We are in a teva, but we are so fortunate. Noach didn't have Zoom, right? And Noach didn't have any way of communicating with anyone. We are connecting with thousands across the world. We're able to email, WhatsApp. We can talk to each other and maybe give an encouraging thought so that we should be able to make it through this difficult night. We're going to make it. We're going to make it, but we need each other. We can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. It's true. And that's why, as we have these days from now till the holiday, call people, give them an idea, maybe give somebody an interesting recipe on charoises. I don't know. I'm not a woman, so I don't have any recipes on charoises. Or maybe give them a thought. There's so many great speakers out there on Torah Anytime. You guys heard Charlie Harari, but of course there's Rabbi Wallerstein, and there's Rabbi Noach Isaac Olbaum, and Rabbi Gladstein, and Rabbi Jacobson from Muncie. Each one of them has a great thought. Write it down, and remember it, and keep it at your seder, and read it, and just make a connection to Hashem as you never made before. It's not going to be easy, but it's an opportunity. And next year when we have 40 people at the seder and kids will be dancing from the ceiling, and you'll think, oh my gosh, we had that quiet for 10 minutes?
We have more questions coming in. Hold on a sec. Let me get the next question. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay.
Are you hearing the reverb?
Yeah, it's okay. But just say it quickly and then I'll repeat it. Yeah, it's a little bit reverb. Go ahead with the question.
Is how does Rabbi Krohn have any tips on how to keep little ones happy at a seder versus the teens and the ones who want to go fast?
Oh, okay. Yeah, the ones who want to go fast versus the little kids, you're saying, and advice on that? Right. Okay. Yes. Does Rabbi have some advice regarding how to, at the seder itself?
That's a conflict that, as from time immemorial, the kids, want to get to the meal and want to get to the singing. And although some families, the kids want to say the Divrei Torah. And I think one of the most important things, and this is what we've done in our family, is that at every piece we allow, let's say, one or two thoughts to be expressed. And first of all, don't forget, we got 2 Sedarim, so you could express it at the second Seder, and also at the day meal. At the day meal, they should be able to take their notes, and especially whatever they've heard this year, they can tell it over the following day. But there's no question that the meal has to move. There's no question, because otherwise, the kids are just going to run away from the table. So there's a delicate balance, and every family has to know what it is. In other words, I want to tell you still another story about my grandson that happened right here at this table where I'm sitting at. And that was a very big difference because he was only 4 years old at the time. But that's a difference when a kid is, 10 or 15. So you have to learn to balance that.
Yeah. What's the story? You were going to tell a story about your grandson?
Okay, I'm going to tell you a story. Do we have time?
Yeah. We're good.
Great. Okay, listen to this story. You'll never believe this. I'm sitting right here at this seder. And this is 20 years ago. My grandson is now 24 years old, Baruch Hashem. His name's Avram Zelek Pfeiffer. And he was 4 years old at the time. Now, of course, you see the svarim and some of the dishes back behind me. But right here is the kitchen. There's the living room and the dining room. And we're in the dining room in the foyer. And a little kid cannot follow the Haggadah. And all of a sudden, we're about to sing Vehisha Amda, which is one of the happiest parts of the seder. And little Avram comes in and he says to me, Zaidi, can I sit on your lap? Well, when you'll be a Zaidi or you're a bubby and your grandson or granddaughter wants to sit on your lap, what's the question? Of course. So fine, I pick up the cup, we all pick up the cup of wine. And, if you're a righty, you hold it with your right hand. You're a lefty, hold it with your left hand. I'm a righty. And I pick up Avram on my left lap and we start singing Vehishamda. The whole family singing Vehishamda. And as we're singing, all of a sudden, tears come to my eyes and I'm starting to cry. Now, if you don't want to cry and you're in front of other people, it's very hard to stop crying. I look down like I'm so embarrassed. And I'll tell you why I was crying. Because I said the words in Vehisha Amda, not just one nation is trying to get rid of us. In every generation, they're trying to get rid of us. And I was thinking, Hashem, isn't it enough? We lost 6 million. We lost 20,000 in Israel since 48. When does it end? What's going to be with this kid's generation and all the people his age? Haven't we given up so much already? And I was very distraught. But of course, I didn't say anything, finished the song, and we continued. After the Haggadah, after the Seder, I took out all my Haggadahs and I started looking to see if I could find some solace in those words. Now, the Maran Chidah, the Chidah Chaim Yosef David Azulai, writes something very interesting. He says, what is the Baal Haggadah telling us? What do you mean every generation they're trying to get rid of us? We have generations over the years where the Jews flourished. Didn't we have 90,000 twice in MetLife Stadium, for Sima Shas? Don't we have schools? Don't we have Beis Yaakovs and Kollels all over the country, all over America and Canada and England? So there have been many generations where we flourished. So what is the Baal Haggadah telling us? In every generation, they're trying to get rid of us. And you know what he said? One of the most important lessons that we can give over to our children and to ourselves this year as we emerge from the table. He said, it's not always the sword, it's the smile. In other words, in America today, we have more intermarriage than ever before. How could that be? We have more opportunities for Torah and for learning and for growth, and yet more intermarriage than ever before. You know what the answer is? Not because of the sword. Nobody's killing us in the streets in America. Because of the smile. Because we can join any college and we can be in any country club and we can become part of the secular world of America. America's a great country. It's not our country. We live here, we're tolerated here, and we love it here. I'm a big believer in the United States of America. It's a great country. But we cannot allow their ways of life, their dress, their talk, their music, their dance to become part of us. Because that's what happens. You let your guard down. And then, unfortunately, you've lost that sense of that beauty of Yiddishkeit. That's what he's telling us. Not every nation is trying, not in every nation they're trying to get rid of us. Sometimes by the sword and sometimes by the smile. Well, I felt a little pacified. 2 days later, I'm a mile, many of you know, I had a bris in a place called Mount Sinai. And there was an Italian guy who married a Jewish girl in a place called Mount Sinai. Well, what are you going to do? Mount Sinai, it's not a Jewish neighborhood. And they had a bris because after all, the grandparents on the mother's side, they were Jewish and the mother was Jewish. She wanted a bris. I wish I would have had my camera. You wouldn't believe it. You know what was on the table right after the bris? A box of Horowitz margarita and matzahs, a bowl of bagels, a meat platter, and a cheese platter. Every avera that you could think of. Basa, b'chalav, meat and milk, chametz and non-chametz. How did that happen? That didn't happen because of the sword. That happened because of the smile. And that's what we got to teach our children this year. We are a holy nation. We left Mitzrayim to be away from the secular world. We're part of the secular world and we admire it and we respect it and we deal with it with care. But we are an elevated people. Never forget that. That's the message of the Yom Tov. We are very mamtonu mikol al shanis. We are elevated, and that's how we have to act. And sometimes when we don't act that way, you're right. It is a chilul Hashem. It's a disgrace. But we as Jews, we have a higher calling, and I think that this year, more than any other time, is when we can focus on that. When Jews can make a difference, when Jews shows that they care, whether it's the Jewish doctors that are going all over the place in Hatzalah, trying to help many, many people. So many wonderful Jews out there doing wonderful things. And that's what we're all about. We have to think about that. And that's that lesson. That's one of the most important lessons that we learn here, right from this Yom Tov of Pesach. We're a special nation. Let's not forget that. We have the Torah.
We have more questions coming in. Hold on a second.
I have a tough one.
Okay.
On Instagram. So somebody said in honor of their sister Mariantina, what do families do when they have a sick parent or head of the family that's in the hospital right now, and they're supposed to actually continue as though nothing's going on, but their family members.
Fine. Okay, got it. Thank you so much, Rabbi. The question that came in is, what are people who are they're going to do their seder and they've got a sick parent or relative in the hospital? They're, how are they meant to deal with that? Does Rabbi have some words of wisdom to help us with that?
Well, first and foremost, constantly you have to be praying for them. You have to be saying Tehillim, whether you say it in English or whether you say it in Hebrew. Your thoughts have to be with them. I'll tell you what a lady told me last night. I don't want to say where this woman is, but she's someplace in the United States. Her husband is in a hospital, and she can't get there. They won't allow her there. But she said that the nurses take their cell phone and they let her speak to him so she could hear his voice. And that's a sensitive thing to do. And I think that we have to make the best of a situation. One day we'll be able to figure out why Hashem, why God put us through this difficult time. But one thing is for sure, we've got to make the best seder that we can make. Even if there's somebody in the hospital, we cannot let that destroy the seder that we are going to make either for ourselves or for those that are around us. That's the challenge this year. And that's how even the person in the hospital would want it. Of course, they're frightened to be alone, and we don't want them to be alone. But we've got to make the most and the best of the situation that we are in. To thank Hashem that we're alive, to thank Hashem that we are in a great country that's battling this thing, and that eventually we'll be able to get out of this mess and we'll be reunited with the people. But let's do the best that we can do. Make every seder that you can, make it special. And one day we're going to look back at this time and say we did not fail. We made it special.
We had another question. A lady had called me the other day and she said, I'm feeling very guilty. I have a neighbor up the street who was NIFT or didn't make it through the coronavirus. I have, people sick, whatever. I've been sequestered for 2 weeks. And she said, Leah, I'm having guilt pangs. Like, am I supposed to be walking around as a mourner? Am I supposed to be for Passover? Am I supposed to be besimcha and be happy? Am I supposed to, take pleasure? She said, I won't have my kids or my grandkids.
Okay, let me tell you the answer. Okay. This is a very important question and a good question and a question that many, many people asked after the Holocaust. Many, many people lost their siblings. They lost their parents. And I know one person who always felt guilty until something happened, as I'll tell you in a second. And he felt, why did God save me? Should I be mourning constantly? I lost my parents. I lost my brothers and sisters. Why did God save me? Am I allowed to be happy? Can I smile? And you know something? Through a way which is not right for right now, which Leah, of course, I'll be happy to tell you on the phone later or whatever, whenever we see each other. He thought of something. And this is how he went on to build his life. And he said, anybody that was in a certain situation And God took them out of that situation. God didn't take them out just to save themselves. God took that person out that they should be able to do for others. And so I say to that lady that called you, for whatever reason that God saved you, He didn't save you that you should become rich and famous. He saved you that with your wonderful heart and wonderful compassion and wonderful lesson of what Pesach is all about, that you should go out and care for as many as you can. That's why God left you here, so that you should care. And you know something? When you care and you do, you're going to feel better about yourself. And you'll feel that one day when I come to Shemayim and I'll ask the questions to God why He did it, but at least He'll know that I was His loyal soldier. God helps others and does for others and has given us so much good in this world. Now, I just want to tell you this thing. Many of you certainly know what the word gematria means. Gematria means the equivalent of Jewish letters. Aleph is 1, Beis is 2, or whatever. Now, we know that the word moedim, which means thanks, we say that every day in Shemoneh Esrei. Write it down, ladies and gentlemen, that you are listening. Moedim is mem, vav, daled, yud, mem. If you add up those letters, it equals to 100. To me, there's a great significance. You got to be grateful for 100% of the things that God has granted you. Not everybody's granted the same thing, but every single thing that you have, especially a breath of life today, is something that you should be grateful for. Of course, we have a right to feel sad for others, but don't feel sad for yourself. God left you here for a reason, so that you should be like Leah. Look what Leah is doing, inspiring hundreds and maybe thousands of people today. Leah could be morbid. A lot of people in Los Angeles in the hospitals, but that's not what her attitude is. We're here. We got to help. That's how you're going to make it through life.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. We have time for one more question, one last question, then we'll be, yeah, okay, go ahead.
So, Leah, can we ask Rabbi Krohn to give us a little teaser, maybe one piece from the Magid Seder?
Oh, fine. Okay, great. So she said, can we get a teaser from Rabbi's book, one story or something like that to about, from the book that you can share with us today?
Okay. Most of your audience is women, right?
Yep, all.
Okay.
All.
Okay. Now, the Talmud and the Medrash tells us that one of the main reasons that the Jewish people left Egypt, were able to go out, is because they were noshim tzidkaniyos. They were wonderful, holy women. And so therefore, in this Haggadah, I try to write by candle lighting and by the Four Sons and other places about special women. Let me tell you a great story. There are many, many great stories about women here, but this is a story that I love. And what happened was, there was a woman who just passed away, maybe about a year and a half ago. I don't know if you ever heard of her. Her name was Rabbi Sheila Feinstein. I don't know if you knew her. Everybody loved her. Very, very, very special. She was the daughter-in-law of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. She was a principal in a public school system, and she worked in the Jewish school system. Just the classiest lady you could imagine. Everybody loved her, and they called her Rebbe Sheila. Now, when she passed away, I went to pay a shiva call. And I said to one of the daughters, tell me a story about your mother that's so special. She said, I'll tell you. She said, we live here in Staten Island, and there are a number of schools in Staten Island. And she said, one morning, one of the, excuse me, I'll just take some water. One of the teachers, one of the Rabbis in the school was running late. And he ran late, and he was rushing because he wanted to get to school on time. And unfortunately, he was not as careful as he should have been. And he hit into a car, like a Lexus, a very expensive car that was standing at a red light. He got out of the car and he said, ma'am, I am so sorry. It's my fault. I realize this is a very expensive car, but I am a teacher. I was trying to rush to school. I didn't want the boys to have to wait for me. So I will pay you whatever it is. Just go to a body shop and I will find out what the cost is and I'll reimburse you. And she said, okay. And she did that. She called him back a couple of days later, and it was really a very, very high price. So he said to her, ma'am, look, I realize it's an expensive car, but I have a friend here in Staten Island who's got a body shop. Now, I would like, if you don't mind, I'll go with you. Let's take the car there and let's see if he could fix it. Now, I do not want you to take it and be satisfied with the job unless you really think that the guy's going to do a great job. And if you feel that he can do that great job, I'm sure that his price will come in much cheaper than the place you went to. Would you be willing to do that? She said, yeah, that's fine. Sure enough, she takes it to this Jewish guy, and the fellow shows him all the work that he's done. She's very impressed, and she says, okay, fine. How long do you think it'll be till it'll be ready? She says, probably just about a week. You'll have it. Anyway, it's not a problem. Fine. And she gives him the price. Now, this Rebbe says to the lady, he says, ma'am, I told you I'm a teacher. I don't really have that kind of money, but I certainly will pay. So would you mind laying out the money for me? And I promise you, I will pay you every month over the next 12 months. And by the end of the year, I will have paid everything that is due to this fellow. But you have to pay him, right when you get the car. Is that okay? She says, yeah, that'll be fine. This guy can't believe it. Anyhow, wouldn't you know it? Every month the guy makes the payments. And at the 12th month, he calls her up. He says, can I come visit you? I'd like to make the 12th payment. I'd like to make it in person. He comes to her house and he says, ma'am, I need you to explain something to me. Right from the beginning, you were so kind to me. The day I hit into your car and I told you who I was, you were so nice. And you were ready to take it first to your body shop. Then you took it to my body shop. And then you were willing to lay out the money. You didn't even know me. And you're willing to lay out the money a year in advance that I should pay you. And here I'm paying you the final payment. Could I ask a question? Why do you trust me? You don't even know me. Listen to what she said. It's one of the greatest stories in the Haggadah. She said, I work with Sheila Feinstein. And once I knew you were from her tribe, I knew I could trust you. Could you imagine that? That's greatness. That's what a Jew is all about. Sheila Feinstein probably didn't even realize that she was making this unbelievable Kiddush Hashem in the public school system. But this wealthy woman driving a Lexus, she knew, if you're from Sheila Feinstein's tribe, I can trust you. Wow, shouldn't everybody be able to say that about us? That's what great women are all about. And that's what this Haggadah is all about. There are many, many great stories. Now, Leah, I just want you to write down this word, okay? If you can. You have a pencil and paper?
Actually,
you write Hebrew, right?
I was looking. Where's my... Oh, yes, I have.
Okay. The first words that the father says after the Manashtana, and he gives an answer to his child. He says, Avodim Hayinu, right?
Yeah.
Write down the word Avodim. Al Ayin, Beis, Daled, Yud, Mem. And I hope all the people that are listening are doing that.
Okay.
Ayin, Beis, Daled, Yud, Mem. I saw something that when I saw it this year, and of course I put it in the Haggadah, it took my breath away. Take a look at those letters, and you're going to see that each of those letters is the beginning of these words. David, you see the Daled? Ben, Yishai, Avdecha, Meshichecha. David ben Yishai, you are my servant. Mashiach's going to come from you. And that's what the Father is saying. My child, we went through Gehenna. We went through a difficulty. We're going through difficulty. Just remember, the redemption is right there. in the first word, avodim. Avodim, slaves. It's awful. Yeah, you bet it's awful. But right there is the hint that we're going to get out of this thing.
That's fantastic.
We're going to make it. That's avodim.
fantastic.
Isn't that fabulous?
That's fabulous. What a gorgeous
love.
thing. Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to Hashem.
Yeah.
Believe me, you know how many years people have been asking me to write Haggadah.
Yeah.
And finally, my wife got on my case and she said, "This is the year."
This is the year. That's why this year is different from all other years. You have Paysach, Rabbi Pasyach Krohn's Sefer. Rabbi.
And I'll tell you something, you know, Leah, in art scroll, they were thinking of calling it the Haggadah Shel Pasyach Krohn, but they decided, no, they're not going to do that.
It's adorable. It's adorable. No, I'm very excited about it. And you've given us so much to think about. And also the main thing that we talk about with the women, you've got to go on mute. Sorry. The main thing that we talk about here is what can you do? Like we're at there's so many circumstances in our life. How do we raise up to be great? You gave us many, many eitzes and many ways to think about what we're doing.
Be happy, be grateful, and more than anything else, be caring. Just remember, Sor Lirois. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu was. He became a leader, not because he was the most brilliant, which he was anyway, but because he cared the most. And when your people care, we're going to make it. That's what Judaism is all about.
Thank you, Rabbi, so much for joining us. We're very, very grateful to have you on, and you've given us a lot to think about. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Leah, try to get this to me because I'd love to send it out.
Yes, fantastic. We'll get it to you right away. This is Leah Richheimer with the Ladies Talk Show. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good kosher Pesach, and everybody should be healthy and well. Wash your hands and be caring to other people. That's the main message for today. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.